Good morning, you guys. It's Wednesday, so I'm coming at you with my podcast preview. Tomorrow, the episode that airs is a really kick-ass guest. So the guest that I interview is Tim Cartmell. And maybe you guys can relate to this, but if you've ever followed someone, you've read their books, you've kept track of what they're doing in your field or something that you're passionate about because they've essentially inspired you. This is where I found myself last week when I got to interview Tim. So for me, in a lot of ways, it's sort of a dream come true to interview someone that I've been inspired by and that I've been following for a number of years. And very luckily, as of about a year and a half ago, started studying under him and learning Xingyi, the traditional Chinese internal martial art. So this is where my focus has been. My background in Chinese medicine has put me into the dialogue with the Chinese martial arts, but Tim Cartmell is one of the guys that has really legitimized the practice of Chinese martial arts, because nowadays there's a lot of, to be blunt, there's a lot of bullshit that is circulated around about the Chinese martial arts and the internal martial arts, which is, if you go to YouTube or you follow McDojo Life on Instagram, you'll see a lot of these videos of people doing chi projection, which is where people are putting their hands out and, essentially making people move through more or less telekinesis. And that has really given the efficacy of Chinese martial arts a really crummy name, because these arts do have fighting application 100%, but there is sort of a sensationalized, thing that has happened in recent years, and that's unfortunate. And what I really appreciate about Tim is that Tim Cartmell has the very unique background where he has studied traditional Chinese martial arts and competed in full contact competitions, holds titles in that, and then moved fully into the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu spectrum, which isn't typical, because most people who study a system, they'll stay in one style or one spectrum, and they will not bridge out because they're unwilling or they're unable to acknowledge the deficiencies that their style will carry. And Tim is very clear about this. Chinese internal martial arts, he said, have very little ground skills. They don't have any fighting skills on the ground, which is, I think, really great, because he saw that, identified it. I understand that. I know that about the stuff that I study. And he said, I'm going to have to get really good at this other piece, this ground skill game, which is why he moved into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So Tim has a really eclectic background. He's done stunt work in China. He's fluent in Chinese, so he lived there for a number of years. He's translated a number of books. But like I said, he has bridged this Chinese internal martial arts spectrum and then gone into the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world, and is now, and has been for a number of years, training elite MMA fighters. He's incredibly skilled. And that's, I think, the piece that has really set Tim apart, is that his skill level and his real-time practical application of these fighting arts and the mechanics involved to elicit martial strength and martial power, he's able to break down, and he teaches it very well. Got a really clear mind, really sharp in his dialogue, and he's able to break down and demystify some of these principles that we're talking about. Now, like I said, I've been fortunate enough to have been training with Tim for the last year and a half or so via Jared Lash's school, which is Descending Dragon Health Center in Arizona, Tucson, Arizona. If you guys have not checked them out, that is definitely worth checking out. Jared is an incredibly skilled martial artist, and because of his connection with Tim, I've been fortunate enough to get to train with Tim, and even my folks, my mom and my stepdad Bob, are actually going with me to Arizona now because they're being exposed to the Xingyi and they really like it. So, like I said, this cool part about this conversation is just that, let's talk about what gives all martial arts their efficacy, and a lot of it has to do with how well you are using the biomechanical structure of your body. In my opinion, I have not met anyone that does this better than Tim. Tim is sharp, and he breaks it down, and I'm considerably larger than Tim. I'm about 100 pounds heavier than Tim. I'm sizably bigger. And in training with him, when I've had him push me, and I haven't given up my weight, I'm just gonna, allow him to push me, but me holding my stance, me not giving in to him, he's able to launch me. And that has always been sort of an eye-opener, given that he's so much smaller than I am. And I think that also really is the eye-opener and the thing that gives me, pause, and it makes the cogwheels turn in my brain about, why is this working? What is he doing that is so effective? And so this conversation is just great. It's a wonderful conversation. I get to interview one of the people that I've been inspired by over the years, which is a dream come true, like I said, in a lot of ways. But I think it's valuable because he talks about why martial art training is important for everybody, why it's potentially important for everybody. Martial arts aren't for everybody, obviously, but he said most people when they start studying these things and they approach it from the vantage point of the fighter, right? The mechanics that we share with, whether we're practicing for health or for fighting, the mechanics are going to be the same. Both are good for you, depending on how you use them. And I like that Tim really says, who's, a gifted athlete, a gifted martial artist, and has spent years perfecting his craft. He also says you don't have to train like an elite fighter to get the benefits of these arts. And I teach that way. When I interviewed Fabian Melendez, the boxer, my friend from high school, he said the same thing. You can train these arts in a way where you adhere to the fighting principles, but you're not aiming to be a fighter, and that's a big piece of where the health benefits come from. So it's an episode that I would strongly encourage everyone to check out. It's a really good one. If you are a martial artist, most definitely watch it. And even if you haven't studied martial arts and you're interested in martial arts, I think Tim embodies one of the most harmonious representations of a teacher. He's humble, he's skilled, he's funny, and he's very practical and down to earth and doesn't get lost in the mystical woo-woo stuff that we see sometimes associated with Chinese martial arts. So you guys should check it out. It's a great episode, and I really hope you enjoy it. And as always, thank you for your time. Enjoy your Wednesday.